Libra, welcome to your end of January 2020 General Tarot Update. It's Rena here, and just shuffling your cards. Let's go cut the cards. The first card. Another card. Certain cards I don't end with. Okay, boy, we got some swords here. And your swords, you are whatchamacallit, air sign. So, you know, there might be another air sign person. Page of Swords, new relationship, another air sign. Another Libra. Lord have mercy. Can you imagine the bathroom mirror being hogged by each one? Oh man, did I just step in it, right? It's funny. It reminds me. This is from a long time ago, but there was this movie. I'm from the Chicago area. There was this movie in the '80s, and it was called About Last Night, and Demi Moore was in it. Yeah. And I think her boyfriend was Rob Lowe. I can't remember. I think that's what it was. And he's, you know, Rob Lowe. For those of you old enough to even remember Rob Lowe, he was part of the Brat Pack. But he's, you know, he's a pretty boy type of a guy. So, you know, they played on that in the movie of them, you know, of him, you know, and being in the mirror, kind of primping, and she's the woman, you know, and it's like, which one? He's like the original metrosexual type of guy, and it was just kind of funny because they were probably like trying to suggest that he was more into his looks than she was. But in any case, this could be a relationship with a Libra, a Gemini, an Aquarius, and this relationship, though, what I would say is, because this card kind of represents somebody being suspicious or trying to look into something. And, it, you know, in some cases, it can be because you feel this sense of suspicion due to a past relationship that has been quite, you know, disappointing, and so now you're a little bit nervous about getting involved with a new one, or there might be something that is actually provoking that. If I look at the past position, we have the Temperance card, which is kind of like, this is connected to Sagittarius, by the way. So if this is the person that you have met and you're suspicious about them, then that could be it. But the Temperance card is half spiritual, half grounded, and that balance between the two. And maybe you're starting to become much more aware of one aspect versus the other. For some people, it's becoming more practical, more concerned with, like, let's say this is a work situation and you feel like somebody else is getting paid more than you, and you find out about that. And in the past, you would have kind of written it off like, well, I'm just here, I'm a spiritual being, and I'm here just to serve others and not worry about the money. And now you realize that it's not about that. It doesn't mean that you don't care about other people to demand a fair wage and things like that. Or that, you know, that you're being greedy. For some people, they have a tendency to be a little bit too concerned with the material, and now that they're more into spiritual, this may be like the practices of the company, ethical, whether or not there's ethical lapses, and feeling like you don't want to be a part of that. So something that you're kind of like getting into alignment, or that you have recently got more into alignment where it wasn't so much in one camp versus the other, is making you more aware. And that's how I see the Page of Swords, as like a heightened awareness of something. The higher message is the Ten of Wands. This is the card of, in one of my books it's called The Burden of Success, because Wands relates to ambition, you know, the fire energy. But in terms of the energy behind it, it can be, you see the person hunched over, that let's say they get a promotion, but they have to work almost twice as much. They, you know, work more hours for the glory of a, you know, an impressive title, but does it really add up in terms of, you know, what you're getting paid? Are you still getting, you know, screwed? And so sometimes these kinds of things happen in order to, you know, flatter the person, like some kind of a promotion, but really the company is trying to get them to work the jobs of like 1.5 people or 2 people or something like that. And you may be kind of like it's starting to ding, 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 you know, dawn on you that this is happening. You may even be taking notes. I often think of that. I call this the spy card, where the person is kind of, you might be doing your job, but you might also be documenting everything because you're planning to, at some point, you know, expose it, or, you know, prove that you have been somehow, you know, cheated out of something. Also, with the Ten of Wands, if this is like, let's say this is a personal relationship where you are starting to kind of like realize something about a relationship, and it's kind of like got your suspicions up, that you may have contributed to this because you have a tendency to take responsibility for everything. And the other person may have thought, well, I've got a live one here. I've got somebody that is going to, you know, go the extra mile. But have they gone the extra mile, or is it just a kind of like a one-sided relationship where you're doing the heavy lifting in the relationship? And then in the process, I mean, this is a card also of burnout. So, I mean, it's like, it's not just a matter of like actually being taken advantage of, but it's also that it can really drain the person to be in that situation. And, you know, I don't really like to talk about, you know, with the Temperance card, I think of that balance and stuff like that. And I don't like to, it's funny, yeah, because you're a Libra, so balance, you know, fairness, that is something, it's funny, that is true of Libra. It's like, I've noticed this about Libra. They're very accommodating, but they always are aware of like tit for tat, it seems like, you know, like what's fair. And it really bugs you when somebody isn't being fair, even if you are very accommodating. I think with the Ten of Wands, though, it's kind of like about nipping it in the bud. It's about like, you know, not just allowing, you know, going the extra mile over and over again and then finally getting fed up. It's like seeing at the very beginning if somebody is trying to ask outrageous things of you and not really seem to like reciprocate, you know, that they think that they can do whatever, but somehow you're the one that has to make all the sacrifices, you know. So in any case, what crosses you is the Nine of Swords. So this is another Swords card. You can probably tell that there's something that feels very restrictive. This is actually a card that's associated with anxiety. In the Morgan Greer deck that I'm holding up right now, this depiction is kind of like the Eight of Swords in the Rider-Waite deck, which is about feeling like your hands are tied, like you're oppressed. But there's almost, I think that the difference between 8 and 9 of Swords is that the Eight of Swords is more of a self you're doing it to yourself. And the Nine of Swords, to me, is more reacting to anxiety. And anxiety, and it's also the number 9, you know, thinking of numerology and what it represents, and the Hermit. When you're alone, I don't know though, I don't think the 9 represents solitude. I think that's more number 7. But in any case, I mean, definitely they use 9s in this way. So that sense of like at night, you know, insomnia can be due to anxiety. And at night when you're not as active, as you tend not to be active, and you have more time to think about your problems. And actually in the Rider-Waite deck, you know, they show a woman, you know, with her hands in her face, sitting up in bed, and you know, in the middle of the night with anxiety, because that is something is bothering her. So in terms of how this affects you at this time, I would say that you can see it as happening to you, but really it's something that you have more power than you know to like deal with. And it's really like, I think that's one of the reasons that we feel so much anxiety sometimes, because we do feel out of control, like it's not something that we can change. But a lot of times, if you think about it, we can change. You can quit your job. People don't tend to do that because they say, well, what am I going to do for money? And that makes perfect sense too. But the point is that you can get rid of that problem. Now, you might start another problem if you don't have the money, you know, currently, but still, I mean, there are always things that we can do. We just have to realize that even if something feels out of our control, you know, this too shall pass. What's coming in, or the advice is the Hermit. Spending time alone, soul searching, and self-inquiry, asking yourself, you know, the cause of your anxiety in this, whatever the situation means to you, and how you got into this mess and how you can get out. And meditation is a great thing. I think I got some other, I think some recent readings have been for Libra, and maybe even on the astrology side of things, that are connected to, you know, your particular spiritual development and things like that, and even psychological, or the past. You know, with Libra, the 4th house is Capricorn, and therefore, you know, all the stuff, Pluto in that 4th house. So you may have been going through a lot of changes, and they may also affect other areas of life. And this is something that it may feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's really for the ultimate good. I'm reading a book right now on Saturn by Liz Green. I think it's called A New Look at an Old Devil or something like that. And it really resonates with me so far about this attitude of looking at something in a negative way versus seeing it as a necessary, you know, influence. Even if it's a little bit challenging, it has ultimately a good purpose, you know, for all of us. The outcome, I did pick an additional card because the 5 of Pentacles is a card about lack consciousness. Sometimes it can be unemployment. So, I mean, if this is a job situation, maybe for some of you, you're kind of on edge because you think that you might get the axe. I just did a reading for your opposite sign, Aries, and, you know, it seems like, you know, there were a couple of people who told me that that was happening for them, which is unfortunate because especially at this time of the year, at the end of 2020, or not 2020, 2019, that does tend to be when the company adjusts their workforce, whether it means cutting your hours or, cutting the position altogether. And so there were people that told me that was true for them. But they're not the only sign that might be true for. And so the thing is, what I said to them is to remember that if something, because the eclipses, you have the lunar eclipse that just happened the other day, happened in your 10th house of career. Lunar eclipse can take something away. So if some of you are dealing with that, or you fear that that's happening, one of the things about the eclipses is not to fear the change that accompanies it, because it really is your higher self trying to move you along. You may not feel that way. As a matter of fact, your north node, transiting north node, is in the 10th house of career in Cancer. And those are, connected. It's not a coincidence. But the thing is that that's where the north node is. So even though there's a lunar eclipse, the north node is still in that 10th house, which means that there is something career-wise that your higher self wants you to do right now, and maybe in a totally different field. And you may already know what it is, but you've been resisting it because it's such a radical change, or you don't know, you're so comfortable where you are right now, all the usual fears. So the Five of Pentacles is about, do you have this lack consciousness which kind of permeates your decision making and ability to withstand some of these changes. Go with the flow is the best advice, is that you don't fight the change, because first of all, it's not going to help. It's a done deal. I mean, if there's something where you feel that you have been treated unfairly, of course, you have the right to defend yourself. But if it's something that is just happening, maybe you're on edge about it because you can tell that things are like a little weird in the work space or the office place, that there's a lot of it seems like people are treating you differently, or who knows, things like that. Now, if you have Mercury in Scorpio, Libra, I can't help you with that, because you're probably always like this. You're probably always like reading into things. But in any case, it's all about not having that sense of like, looking at an event and saying, okay, it's all gone to hell. I can't, do anything now. That's not true. It's you can choose how you perceive any event. And in some cases, it might just be like kind of that pessimistic attitude that can outpicture itself in whatever happens, but also can kind of taint things and make you suspicious when there is nothing to be suspicious about. And then this is the other card I drew, the Queen of Swords. So to me, this is having control of your thoughts. The Queen is royalty, so there's a sense of authority. But the Queen represents the water element, which is your feelings. And so the swords represents thoughts. So you have to be able to put your feelings in proper context, not allow your feelings to get out of control, and not allow your feelings to prevent you from making the important decisions that you may have to make, depending on what your particular situation is. And now that I have, when I draw this card, I always think of a person that has to make a decision. And it's almost like you're at that crossroads. Well, Libra as a sign tends to have an indecisive nature. And this is actually due to a great talent that Libra has for seeing all sides of an issue. Why do you think Librans tend to gravitate towards the law in their career choice of some, in some way? Because they can, a lawyer can defend somebody by looking at the situation in a different way. So in any case, sometimes we have to decide what we're going to do so that we can truly move forward. All right, that's what I have for you, Libra. So I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a personal reading, the link to my website is below. I'm at RainaMoonAstrology.com. Take care. Bye.